talking about the full moon in Virgo, where we organize the Pisces fantasy creative world. Very important time right now. Very important to talk about how Pisces and Virgo interact. So check this out. This is the full moon in Virgo forecast. You see the full moon is happening on April 7th, 2020, around 7 p.m. Or so in the evening. That's Pacific time. You can see the chart here. And this is happening in Chitra Nakshatra. And it's the section of Chitra that is in Virgo, of course. Chitra is the nakshatra that is in between Virgo and Libra. So we see that the sun is up here in Pisces, and it's opposite the moon down here in Virgo. So of course this Pisces-Virgo axis is being lit up now. So we always look at a full moon in reference to the place where we have the sun, because the sun is the anchor of each month, each soli lunar month. So wherever the sun is really allows us to assess the full moon, because the full moon is opposite that sun. So right now we're really learning that Pisces principle. As I said a couple weeks ago when we had the new moon in Pisces, it's going to be a time of connecting to something beyond. That can mean our, sort of creative imagination world, the world of escapism, the world of fantasy, the part of us that's not so much of this tangible, literal world. So this is why the last few weeks could seem like we had been getting into a bit of fantasy, escapism. Again, especially, given the current situations in the world, it's very easy to conflate and get into imagination stories, right? Dark fantasies or overly, rosy fantasies. As I say, particularly with the nature of the world now, we can have a tendency to either project, oh, I think everything's going to be fine, or, oh, this is the end of the world, like getting into, again, sort of imagination, which could be something, akin to a sort of escapism. And again, escapism doesn't mean we escape into something healthy. We can escape into something that's dark. But what we can know is that a lot of our fantasies, or our what we would call projections, which is very Piscean, shows more about us than it does about any actual scenario. If you notice all around you, those people who tend to want to see things, as the glass half full, they also see this as the glass half full. These situations that are happening now with the quarantining and the being in isolation. Those who tend to see it as the glass half empty and, oh God, it means the end is near and let's worry about everything and let's conflate and spin everything toward the darkest possible situation or outcome. They tend to see everything that way. They're always the ones who think, oh, here it is. This is just them waiting to do something to us and take it all away. And again, there's a reason to, believe that anything is possible, for sure. But again, with this Pisces cycle, this Pisces time we're in now, it's not just an external projection that we can see in the world and that we're engaged in, but it's a way to introspect and reflect internally at our own tendencies. Of course, because we're the source of all of those projections. So within that backdrop now, we have the full moon in Virgo. Now again, Virgo is exactly opposite the Pisces fantasy, escapism. It's the literal details and the need to organize and manage those details and look at things sensibly, rationally, calmly, with a mind towards more, with an eye towards skepticism, because it's definitely a skeptical sign. Virgo is a Tamasic sign. which is a little bit worried about all the details that we can't understand. So it's good to have a little bit of concern and worry in most situations in life, particularly the ones that are opposite the Pisces realm, right? The universe is so beautiful and flowering, my teachings, I just believe them all. It's good to have that, but there's also opposite that is the Virgo energy, which says, well, wait a minute, let's be sensible here. Let's look at the details. So we're going to really be noticing all the details that are not in alignment, all the details that are not lining up. Now we can look literally externally at how have our leaders handled this, let's say this crisis that we're in. We can go back a couple weeks ago and say, what should have or could have happened a couple weeks ago or even earlier that could have made this better? Are they rationally evaluating the situation now? This is an externalizing of the energy. How did they handle that objectively? Of course, so there will be a lot of scrutiny right now around those areas of life where we're scrutinizing not just our leaders, politically or what have you, but ourselves as well. How have we handled this? Were we not wanting to face it earlier? How are we facing it now? Do we see the seriousness of it now? And again, how do we bring those two things together so that we're not just riding some extreme? Again, because the tendency will be perhaps to, again, over-project, oh, it's going to be fine, to now go, uh-oh, the whole thing is falling apart. Because depending on how tuned into the actual reality of the world you are, let's say, you're going to vacillate between one extreme or the other, perhaps. So you want to be aware of this tendency that you have to vacillate between one extreme or the other in your life. And when it comes to things that maybe scare you or, things that you can't control, do you go and do you sort of ignore it as long as you can and hope it goes away and just go, oh, it'll all work itself out somehow, which is the Pisces thing. And then once that hasn't worked and the situation deteriorates, now you're like, oh boy, now it's going to be horrible. We tend to do this as a species. And right now, these times we're living in, these are the kinds of situations that I see that we're being confronted with, is the need to do it better than just thinking it's someone else's problem, wishing away the situations and the scenarios that brought us to have to be quarantined and socially distant, which is the Pisces thing, not wanting to pay attention, hope it's all going to go away, that we can just keep ravaging the planet, treating animals the way we do, treating each other the way we do. It just, using transportation and airplanes and fuel and everything that this world is based on, this world that's being challenged right now, as if we can just keep doing that with no consequences ever, like it's never going to come back and reveal the danger. Well, now it's revealing the danger. And this Virgo full moon is a time to really just see that and to be sober about where do we go from here? Because there will be life after this. It might take a while. When I say while, I don't just mean a couple months. I've already said, and I'm on record, and I'll say it again, we're going to be dealing with some version of this for a few years. And it doesn't mean the same crush of death and everybody staying home and everybody unsure of what's going to happen. We're going to find a way that we're going to start to cohabitate again, to commingle again, to be in each other's presence again. But it's going to be different. And it needs to be different. We need to change our patterns of interaction socially, economically, energetically with nature, all of these things. Just look at what these times are showing us right now. Not even in any kind of abstract way. What are we having to do in order to get through this? Stay home and stop doing what we do all the time. Which is basically stop going out and polluting the world. And again, when I say polluting the world, driving in our cars everywhere, flying in airplanes everywhere constantly, tens of thousands of flights every day. Just look at how the earth, how Mother Nature has been able to take a collective breath since all this happened. That's no fluke. That's anyone who believes in karma or some kind of energetic harmony of nature on any level has to be able to see this for what it is. On that level, at the very least. So some corrective process within this will be what we're having to do going forward. So this full moon in Virgo, on a larger scale, is energetically showing us these things and preparing us, where we could really start to begin to prepare and shift toward, at least, mentally and psychologically, toward a better stewardship of nature, of resources, of each other. Notice all of the great stories that we've seen amidst the suffering. How, on some level, it's also very inspiring our fellow man, the way people are pulling together, the way the human spirit is still alive, and how, most of us are realizing that this is, that ultimately this is going to be something beneficial. We have to be very vigilant to, the possibility of being exploited by the system, and all these other frustrations are there. Nothing's going away. But ultimately, this full moon in Virgo is to try to bring a sobering reality. And again, that means if you've been too airy-fairy, it'll all work out, it's just overblown, it's just a bunch of overblown hype, and blah, blah. This full moon in Virgo is landing it going, it's much more serious. Like, no, this is real. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason we've had to distance ourselves. It's not overblown hype. But again, there's also the conspiracy theory scenarios about it's just, again, all of the dark fantasies about what it means, and all the things that no one really knows at this point, or at least there's no proof. I'm not even going to say all these things, but even just spinning out on the paranoid possibilities of what this might mean. Because we can even just project, if we don't get this right now, and the world doesn't take the lesson that we need to socially distance for a while, maybe another month and a half or 2 months, to at least push this thing back enough, then this could just drag on forever and ever and for a long time, and then really crash things even worse. This definitely seems to be the way we need to handle this, and we need to just be sober about it. And again, this is the nature of Virgo. Virgo is very much a sign of, take your medicine, be of service to something higher. It might be difficult, but this is the best thing we can do right now. Regardless of what happened in the past, Virgo is often a great sign of healing. Self-healing, but also self-healing as a species, healing as a culture, healing the earth, healing the systems. And many times we don't start to heal until we get sick. That's why Virgo is also the sign of getting sick. We don't heal until we get sick. We always wait for things to get to the point to where they've gotten too far before we do something about it. There's nothing new there. And I see this as the beginning of a great renaissance and a great healing on this earth that has been overdue. And that means I'm thinking 5, 10, 20 years in the future when we do get a handle on global warming and we can reverse the effects of climate change and patterns of consumption that have polluted the earth and all of these things. The generation that is coming up now will have a different approach to finance, economy, technology, things like nanotechnology. I think we're going to see a huge boon in technologies and things to help us with this as a species overcome this and many other challenges. This is where we're at right now in human history. And we can just fantasize and sort of check out, or we can check in. We can tune in and serve each other more, keep our paranoia at bay. Stop, we're not serving each other when we share paranoid stories. If we hear difficult news, we need to temper that with intelligence and with being practical, and realize, even like in our social media and whatnot, all the stuff that we share, we're responsible for that. And I see people just, very irresponsibly, frankly, sharing a lot of things that, maybe they hear something that's certainly difficult and negative. There's enough difficult and negative possibilities happening now but instead of sharing it with any nuance or any counterbalance, it's just the negative. And again, that's also a virus. It's a virus of negativity. Social media even has the terms viral. So anything that you're doing that's viral news, we live in a viral world now. And we need to have clear-headed information and clear solutions and techniques and practices go viral. We need that to go viral. And in the meantime, again, individually and personally in our lives, this is very good for spiritual practices. This full moon in Virgo, very much about, again, Virgo is details, sadhana, spiritual practice, where we create an intelligent structure for our transformation. The Virgo-Pisces axis is literally an axis of spiritual sadhana and spiritual practice. Saying mantra and being devoted. When you see a Vedic priest, what's called a pujari, they're doing all of these little things. It's all these little details that they do. They say all of these mantras, these long mantras. They do all these mudras, all of these gestures with the hand. They do all these purification rituals, all of these practices. Now, many of them have a literal meaning. For example, all of the little, all the parts of the puja. Of course, you have light, which, you have a ghee lamp, which represents the fire element. You have flowers, which represents the sense of smell element, all of the senses. You have, mantra, which represents the sound of, the sound sense, the sense of hearing. So there's a literal way of cleansing the 5 elements through the different senses, but it's also just a ritual for the pujari to be present. All those details makes you present. And this is what spiritual practices are. They're ways to make you, to bring you into the present moment. Because it's in that present moment, in that earth realm, the earthiness of Virgo, that you can land and experience all of the Pisces expansiveness. Because again, Pisces is really connected to the other world. This is why it's related to imagination and things not of this world. And we want to kind of escape from this world into the other world. But we have to be in this world, in this body, in order to have it be sadhana and spiritual practice. Otherwise, it's just escapism. And we can just escape into the other world through things like drugs and alcohol. And when we do that, we're not embodied anymore. We're not embodying that metaphysical quality. We're not embodying the transformation. In fact, we're becoming disembodied. And then it's not spiritual. It's just escapism. And these are very important, personal and, I think, external, global, social situations that are happening now. So the nakshatra of Chitra is also very important because Chitra, is ruled by Vishwakarma, the divine architect. And this divine architect is aligned with building a structure, building a container through which we grow. And again, it's literally about, things like architecture and something like a house. But again, it doesn't have to be a literal house. It can be the house that you inhabit in your own heart. It's like a sanctuary, like a church. But again, the outer church is just a representation of the inner sanctum. And Chitra literally is ruled by a gem which is both fire, which is both earthy because it comes from the earth, and also beautiful and brilliant because it's also, the second half of it is in Libra. So it's both a practical form and a structure that comes from the earth, and a beautiful one which shines brilliantly and has to do with passion, desire, art, joy. The big lesson there is, in these times now, we have a great opportunity to find that joy and beauty and passion, that art and that sanctuary in our own heart. You know, we're usually so habituated to going out, finding all of that joy of life and happiness in our connections with other people. The hardest part of these times now is that we're not able to go out and socialize, staying home. Of course, there's other fears because we're not working and money and all that, but I mean day to day right now what's been happening. But that also has made many of us closer. I know personally I've been making more phone calls, I've been reconnecting with more people that I haven't in a long time. But it's also made us find the source of that happiness, which is, again, in our own heart. And in this Pisces-Virgo cycle now, there's a great opportunity to reclaim that source of happiness, which is not some person or some external experience. Now we also have a few other things that are very important. Venus is very powerful now in Taurus, so we're feeling that connection with others very deeply and enjoying that exchange. We enjoy that exchange with others right now because of this Venus in Taurus. It feels good, it feels natural. There's a high level of empathy and wanting to share beauty with others. We also have this Mercury is in its debilitated sign of Pisces. It just went in there. It's going to go through pretty quick. But this full moon in Virgo, the ruler, Mercury, is debilitated in Pisces. So again, we could really be spinning out over the next couple weeks on these dark fantasies. We have to be careful. We're going to be getting a lot of perhaps bad information from our leaders. We could get some more confusing information. God knows leaders in this day and age, many of them are really confusing and confused, and so are the people. The people are going to start to get restless and start becoming more prone to manipulation through, propaganda and bad data. So we need to watch this for the next couple weeks as well. And guard your state of mind, guard your emotions, and be careful of what you're spreading. Be careful that you're spreading a positive thought virus. Doesn't mean you ignore what's going on, but you can talk about it in a way that is value neutral, that doesn't mitigate the difficulty and the pain and the sadness, but also doesn't become completely lost in that as if that's the only thing that's possible or the only thing that's going on. And then you project worry into the future, and it could mean that, oh God, watch out, oh, it's going to be so hard, all of this. That's your mind. If this is how you see it, that's your mind. Everyone doesn't see it that way. Everyone doesn't feel, even right now, as stressed out, paranoid, and worried as you feel. If you feel this way, you really owe it to the rest of us to keep it to yourself. Keep that part of it to yourself. Please, please stop if you're doing this. Stop it. You're not just making sure everybody knows. I mean, what I see is I see people doing this. I just want to make sure everybody's aware. We're all aware. We're all aware of the possible danger. We don't need to also navigate your paranoia or comfort your paranoia. Everyone is not feeling it that way. And honestly, what I have found, unfortunately, is just having to wall myself off from people I know who, once again, because every situation that happens, this is them, this is how they act to it. And of course, because I know a lot of people and I know I'm an astrologer, I get bombarded with all of their paranoia. What do you think about this? I heard this. Just endless messages. I'm just walling myself off. I don't have the energy to sit there and manage their hysteria. There's nothing to be hysterical about right now. Yes, this is hard. It's going to be hard for a couple years. I'm not sugarcoating it. I never have been. I've been saying it since the end of last year, literally with the astrology. That doesn't mean there's anything to be hysterical over at this point. Could it happen? Yeah. If it goes on too long, financial systems could collapse. We could have all kinds of other things. But again, there's nothing that... I don't think this is going to happen because as a species, we're invested in not having that happen. We're learning. We're in transition. There are other things that I worry about even more that most people aren't even talking about, which is, I will just tell you, and I'm going to do a more formal update on this soon. Maybe I'll just mention it right now, but I'm definitely more concerned about things like earthquakes and natural disasters that are definitely possible right now, particularly with all of these planets, this Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and Capricorn. This is a signature for particularly seismic activity and earthquakes. And I mean, that's all we need right now is a major, earthquake somewhere or some major natural disaster starting to hit right now while we're trying to deal with this. But those things aren't just going away. But again, it's not a hysterical, there's no reason to sit here and worry our whole life about it. We know these things are possible, so we should be prepared. So, but again, all of this is just the external world. It doesn't change the day-to-day. I'm still doing my best to do my practices, to do my, my meditation, mantras, physical asana, all of these things. And they have been deeper and more profound than ever. That's the great possibility right now with all these planets in Capricorn, this Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, this Sun in Pisces, very much in that metaphysical realm right now. It's there. If you're there, it's there. If you're not, it's not there for you. Then it's just some dark fantasy or some fantasy projection that you always bring out. Maybe it's a rosy one, maybe it's not. Again, I already talked about that part. But the real possibility now is to penetrate into that cosmic level, into that cosmic realm. So I hope this was helpful for you. And if you want to know how these things affect every day, you can, and see how this full moon in Virgo is going to affect your sign, you can join the Astrology Training Lab. Only 50 cents for 14 days. And this will, and I will do this forecast for all 12 signs. It's different. The full moon in Virgo is different if you're Aries than it is if you're Pisces. It's different if you're, Capricorn. It's in your 9th house, for example. So this only 50 cents, you get that for your sign, and you get daily forecasts based on the ascendant, based on the nakshatra, the rashi, the vara, or the lord of the day, the tithi, the lunar phase. So this Astrology Training Lab is a great way for you to understand these cycles beyond just in general like I'm talking about now. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you share this with others. Let them benefit from this positive thought virus. Make this video viral. And you take care.